Math 76, lesson 17, number line, fractions, and mixed numbers. So I actually don't even think I'll need any work paper for this today. I just need to use the diagrams they've got here and my trusty ruler. So let's start with number line fractions. So what we're going to be talking about in number line fractions is that the number line, as I've said in the past, actually contains all real numbers. So every single number can be represented on this number line. What that means is that in this whoa, I'm so out of focus now. I went way too close. Okay, there we go. What that means is that in this space in between 0 and 1, we can put every single number that's less than 1 but bigger than 0. Some of you are thinking like that's not a lot of numbers. Well, we can put in numbers like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9. We can put all those in here with different marks. Right? We'd also put in fractions, like we put in 1/2, we put in 1/4, 1/8, 1/16, 3/16, 5/16. See, now I'm just throwing out numbers that you've only heard your parents say when they're looking for different tools or wrenches. But the point is, there's a lot of numbers hiding in between our integers on our number line. So in between 0 and 1, we've got a lot of numbers hiding there. Also in between 1 and 2, like for example, 1 and 1/2 is hiding in between 1 and 2. Right? So that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about half numbers and how they hide in the number line. So here, they've added all the half numbers here. So here we see 0, 1/2, 1, 1 and 1/2, 2, and then it keeps going. And if we go backwards from 0, we have -1/2, -1, -1 and 1/2, -2, -2 and a half, -3, right? And so what we're seeing here is that the half numbers are exactly halfway in between the whole numbers on the number line. So what that tells us is if I wanted to know, I need to zoom back out now. There we go. So if I were to ask you what number is halfway in between 2 and 3, you would look at your number line and you would say, oh, well, that's going to be 2 and 1/2, right? Or if I were to ask you what number is halfway in between -3 and -2, that would be -2 and 1/2, or -2 and -1, -1 and 1/2. So now we can start seeing these half numbers, right? And that's important because as you'll see when I go to the fractions and mixed numbers and we go to using our ruler to measure 16ths, you'll notice something really interesting about my ruler and about most rulers, which is I don't have all these markings, right? So let's go ahead and go over to that. Let's see here. We've got our ruler marks. That's us making a ruler. We'll hopefully have time to do this in class where we build a ruler. That'll help you understand 16ths a little bit better. But we're going to do this right here, this example number 2. They want us to use our ruler to find the length of this line segment to the nearest 16th of an inch. Now, when I go up to my ruler, as I've used in the past, some of you may remember, my ruler is only marked into eighths, right? So if I go to 1 inch, I've got 1/8, 2/8, or 1/4, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and 1 inch. I don't have any marks for 16ths. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that logic we just used from our number line of halfway in between a number, right? So if I'm at 0 and 1/8, halfway in between 0 and 1/8 is 1/16th, right? Because every time we cut it in half, we double the number of pieces, right? And you can see that here as I compare my ruler to this ruler on the page, right? So this ruler is marked out in 16ths. And you see, from my point here, my 1/8 mark, they've got 2 tick marks. This would be the 16th mark, right? So for every 1/8, there are 2 16ths. So 1/16th, 2/16th, 3/16th, 4/16th. So halfway in between each of my 1/8 marks, you can see those 16th marks, right? As we go down the ruler. And that's the knowledge that I'm going to use when I have to measure this into 1/16th, because not all of your rulers are going to have a 16th increment of measure, right? Now this line, if I measure it, it goes out and it looks like I'm at 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7/8. All right, so this one worked out perfectly. And 7/8 does count as a nearest 16th of an inch. That's actually 14/16ths, right? Because if we go back up here and we compare, if we're counting in 16th, we count the 1/8 marks, we count the 1/4 marks, and we also count the 1/2 marks to get all the way up to 16. Right? So that one was a little easy. Now let's see if I have one that doesn't line up perfectly on the 1/8 mark. I do. Let's see here. Maybe we can measure. Trying to find a way to cover up the answer here. There. So the answer on that one is written right there. So I'm going to try to measure this and then keep the answer covered all up at the same time. Let's see here. And we'll zoom in on that line. All right, so as you can see, when I put my ruler up to this one, we've got 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, and then it goes halfway in between the 6 and 7/8. So I got to count this in sixteenths. So in between each tick mark, I'm going to use a 16th. So I've got 0, 1/16, 2/16, 3/16, 4/16, 5/16, 6/16, 7/16, 8/16 at the halfway mark, which is correct. So I know I didn't make any mistakes. 9/16, 10/16, 11/16, 12/16, and halfway in between would be 13/16. So this line is 13/16 of an inch, which is the correct answer. And so if you have a ruler that is not marked out into 16ths of an inch, that is how you measure to the nearest 16th of an inch. If you do have a ruler that is marked out to 16ths of an inch, like this one is, it becomes a very simple process. You would just line it up and then count all the way up to that 13th line. If you guys have any questions, let me know on the school website, and I will see you in class.